සියලුම SLT මොබිටෙල් සේවාවන් MySLT ඇප් එක හරහා කරගන්න. සියලුම SLT මොබිටෙල් සේවාවන් MySLT ඇප් එක හරහා කරගන්න.
දසනකාන්ති චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
In your headlines tonight, tread carefully. Sri Lanka prepares for next UN Human Rights Commission session in Geneva, seeking to address allegations of rights violations, while Sri Lanka's creditors are to be carefully managed.
We are not interested in any confrontation. We are interested in consensus and a cordial relationship with all multilateral agencies.
Targeted welfare. QR code system to help collect data on most vulnerable population entitled for benefits. 3.3 million rupees to be disbursed among identified beneficiaries. Easing the burden. Litro Gas Lanka Limited once again slashes prices across all its domestic LP gas cylinders as per new pricing formula. This Monday, the 5th of September, 2022.
විම්දියර මිලිලීටර් 100 ස්මාර්ට් පැක් එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome joining you tonight on First at 9. I'm Indivari Amuwatta. We take a look at your top stories making headlines tonight. The Welfare Benefits Board will introduce a QR code system to collect data on the population entitled for state-sponsored targeted welfare benefits to vulnerable communities. A social registry will be compiled once data collection is complete to set up a new mechanism for distributing relief among the most vulnerable beneficiaries. According to the Ministry of Finance, a total of 3.3 million rupees is expected to be spent on the new welfare program.
The Ministry of Finance announced today that a QR code-based system will be introduced in order to identify beneficiaries for government's welfare programs such as the Samurdhi and other targeted welfare programs. The move following a proposal made in the interim budget of 2022 by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to effectively implement the Welfare Benefits Act through the Welfare Benefits Board. As such, the Welfare Benefits Board has been tasked with collecting data and to establish a database or a social registry on the population that is hard hit by the economic crisis. During a media briefing carried out at the Ministry of Finance today, Treasury Secretary K. Mahinda Sirivardhana explain the number of respondents they expect to have for the initial phase of the survey.
There are 1.75 million beneficiaries right now, and in addition to that, elderly about 416,000, and disabled persons about 72,000, and persons with the CKDU it's about 39,000, and total of about 2.3 million. And then we have identified that there are people who are in the waiting list as well. Right, in the waiting list, about 725,000 people are in the Samurdhi. So likewise, about 1 million people are there. So there will be some other people who lost their income and also some facing difficulties. Something around 500,000 people would also be there. And altogether, if you take this entire people who are there, so we expect about 3.9 million respondents would be responded. That does not mean that this will be the entire number who would get the benefits, but this is a kind of a number that we are expecting to at least respond to this survey.
Further, Director General of the Department of National Planning of the Ministry of Finance, Anuradha Kumarasiri, responded to questions on the World Bank's involvement for the welfare program.
From May to July, we have already utilized funds allocated by the World Bank, 145 million USD for 3 months. And also from September to November, coming 3 months, from this month to November, ADB has already agreed and agreement going to be signed coming 9 by the government and the ADB for this year. For this program, for the currently, we are providing existing beneficiaries as well as the waited list beneficiaries around 3.3 million. That's we are covering from May to July, from September to November. But next year we had some discussion with the World Bank. From January onwards, they will come up with some new funds.
Litro Gas Lanka Limited announced a reduction to its LP gas prices with effect from midnight tonight. The price of a 12.5 kilogram Litro gas cylinder will thereby be reduced by 113 rupees, the 5 kilogram cylinder by 45 rupees and the 2.3 kilogram cylinder by 21 rupees. The price revision is based on the newly introduced LP gas price formula. On the 5th of August too, domestic gas prices were reduced in accordance with the pricing formula.
The state gas supplier Litro Gas Lanka Limited announced a downward revision of its prices with effect from midnight today. Accordingly, the price of a 12.5 kilogram domestic LP gas cylinder will be reduced by 113 rupees. With that, the new price of a 12.5 kilogram Litro cylinder will be 4,551 rupees. The price of a 5 kilogram cylinder meanwhile will be reduced by 45 rupees to 1,827 rupees, and the 2.3 kilogram cylinder will be revised down by 21 rupees to 848 rupees.
This is all accordance with the newly introduced pricing formula with the help of the Finance Ministry and also the Consumer Affairs Authority. The new prices will come to effect from midnight, so we'll be issuing the cylinders for the new prices after 12 midnight today.
With Sri Lanka reaching a staff-level agreement with the global lender, the Washington-based IMF, the Samagi Janabalawegaya parliamentarian Dr. Harsha De Silva demands President Ranil Wickremesinghe to table the staff-level agreement in Parliament tomorrow. Speaking to media, Dr. Harsha De Silva said, if President fails to present the staff-level pact reached with the International Monetary Fund to Parliament, he would take necessary measures as chairman of the Committee of Public Finance to have the report released.
We are certainly glad that the government of Sri Lanka and the IMF entered into a staff-level agreement. The issue here is, what did the government of Sri Lanka agree with the IMF? What is in this staff-level agreement? None of us know what is in there. So saying, yes, we signed the agreement is one thing, but before we jump for joy, we must know what is in this agreement. I demand immediately Ranil Wickremesinghe, the President, and as the Minister of Finance on Tuesday morning to table this document in Parliament. If he doesn't table it in Parliament on Tuesday, I as the Chairman of the Public Finance Committee will take necessary measures in order to get this out. No debate can actually happen in Parliament on this agreement, which is going to be the base upon which the next so many months, years will be structured, without knowing what it is. So if he agreed to take the primary deficit from -6 to positive 2.3 by 2025, is a massive change in the entire tax structure, expenditure structure. I mean, how are you going to do such a huge change? Where is these taxes going to come from? How is it going to impact the normal people of this country? So none of that is known.
A committee has been appointed by President's Secretary Saman Ekanaika to facilitate and efficiently carry out the process of repatriation of Sri Lankans who have gone to India as refugees during the time of the Northeast conflict in Sri Lanka. The committee, headed by Additional Secretary to the President, Chandima Wickremesinghe, includes Controller General of Immigration and Emigration and a senior official each from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Registrar General's Department and the Ministry of Justice. This decision to appoint a committee was reached today during a discussion chaired by President's Secretary Saman Ekanaika at the request of the Organisation for Elam Refugees Rehabilitation to repatriate Sri Lankans who left to India as refugees during the time of war. It was stated that about 58,000 Sri Lankans are currently living in Tamil Nadu in India as refugees, and about 3,800 of them are ready to return to Sri Lanka. According to the President's Media Division, the Sri Lanka Deputy High Commissioner's office in Chennai will be coordinating the efforts. Now, as Sri Lanka prepares itself for the 51st session of the UN Human Rights Commission, Foreign Minister Ali Sabri says that Sri Lanka will avoid any form of confrontation with any international partner going forward.
Upcoming human rights sessions are just about to begin. We are going as a delegation. I'm leading the Sri Lankan delegation. Honourable Minister of Justice will take part in this, and senior officials from the Ministry and the Attorney General's Department. We have continuously engaged with the international community. We are a very respectful, responsible and dignified partner of the international community in whatever the forums. We take pride on that. So therefore, we will continue to engage. Our engagement is cordial, friendly, but there is limitation that we are all bound by the constitutional framework of this country. We are bound to protect the constitution. So whatever the solution, whether it's accountability or whether it comes to anything else, we have to provide that within the framework of the Sri Lankan constitution. So within that limit, we are willing to engage and provide whatever the solution necessary. It is within that framework we will continue to engage. So, however, we are not interested in any confrontation. We are interested in consensus and a cordial relationship with all multilateral agencies and the bilateral countries. So that is the policy of the government of President Wickremesinghe. Specific instructions have been given for engagement. We are looking at a holistic solution or a lasting solution to the problems or the grievances of all parties who have suffered the long-term conflict in this country. Not one party, everyone. So therefore, ultimately we also understand we need to go for a truth-seeking mechanism.
And what is the outlook for the Colombo Stock Exchange and markets in Sri Lanka? Details after this break.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වාලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. Then you know Rhino. I know.
Big 3.
Welcome back to the news, taking you to the Colombo Stock Exchange. Now, the bourse witnessed yet another day of gains as investors confidently rallied with interest on LOFC, which led the market today as investors reacted positively on the news of the amalgamation of LOFC with NIFL. Now, the main index moved on an upbeat sentiment throughout the day and remained high despite slight fluctuations as the buying spree picked up and closed for the day at 9,366, gaining 50 points. Turnover continued to record a healthy level of 4.1 billion rupees, with transportation sector and the diversified financial sector led the overall turnover with a joint contribution of 39%. Market saw a net foreign inflow of 647 million rupees during the day. The bourse has seen a net foreign inflow of 1.85 billion rupees so far this year. And now, with the ongoing developments in Sri Lanka, a staff-level agreement reached with the global lender IMF. Sri Lanka's stock market's forecast is something we have been talking about. There has been an upward trajectory. There has been stocks gaining and ending in green territory. But to discuss the way forward and what is expected in the markets, the forecast and the outlook, we've invited to our studios the chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Dilshan Veerasekara. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, India. It's good to be here.
So you've taken over as chairman since June, and we've seen a tremendous shift in policy stance in Sri Lanka during this period, a volatile situation, and now the latest, finally, the global lender, the Washington-based global lender, has agreed to extend a $3.9 billion or $2.9 billion bailout package to Sri Lanka. But what does this mean to the Colombo Stock Exchange going forward and the appeal for foreign investors?
Sure. So I think the IMF agreement means a lot for the entire country, economic-wise. I think a lot of what we had planned in terms of whether it be debt restructuring, foreign investment, all of that, the cornerstone would remain the IMF package. So I think it acts very positively, not only for the Colombo Stock Exchange, but for the economy in general. And we hope that this would be a catalyst for other bilateral lenders, multilateral lenders, or even investors to take comfort that now Sri Lanka has passed through the worst and is heading towards stability. So I would think that it means a lot, and it would be taken as a big positive for capital markets in general.
In terms of the fluctuation of the market, we saw changes, we saw several ups and downs over a period of time. So how would you explain this to us, and what is the outlook for the Colombo Stock Exchange?
So I think it mirrors the economic crisis that we went through in Ivory. So if you trace back and look, the market did extremely well in 2021. It peaked in January of this year, and obviously thereafter we had the economic crisis unraveling, where we defaulted on our foreign debt obligations. Thereafter we had political turmoil, not having a stable government in place, and transition through those protests to finally having an established government, a new president, and sort of stability in general. So I think the market mirrored that. It wasn't anything in particular. Market mirrored that. The market touched the 13,000 on the all share price index in January, an all-time high. Market cap was 5.5 trillion rupees, and then you had 4 or 5 months of bad performance that mirrored the crisis. The index fell to, I think, a little under 7,000. So we had about a almost 50% reversal from the peaks that we saw in the early part of the year. But I think the reason for that was that we went through the worst economic crisis that this country has seen post-independence. And now that we've got some stability, we've done certain changes, both from a macro perspective, from a fiscal perspective. We've depreciated the currency, we've hiked interest rates, we are pricing commodities properly, fuel, electricity. We have a new government in place. We've appointed a debt restructuring team, and now finally we've got an IMF bailout package. So I think the market is just reflecting that.
So what changes do you expect to introduce at the Colombo Bourse?
So I think we are going to continue with what we've been doing. So we've had a strategic plan to the stock exchange looking at the next 5 years. We are not thinking of doing anything differently given the context of the IMF package, but we were doing that already in place. So we've sort of looked at broad basing, making the capital markets accessible to all Sri Lankans. We've done that over the last 3-4 years. We'll try to do more of that. We currently have about 750,000-800,000 CDS account holders, but only about 60,000 of them really trade the market on a regular basis. So our objective is to broad base that. We want to introduce technology, new products. We are still a dual product market. We have equity, we have listed debt. We need much more products. We need commodities, we need derivatives, we need ways investors can hedge themselves. So we are doing all of these things, developing the infrastructure, broad basing the investor base, and finally looking at getting more issuers to come on the exchange and have a market that really represents the broader economy than otherwise.
But how would you address the question of literacy, which is still very low?
So I think it's financial literacy that's low. Unfortunately, our school curriculum doesn't really educate our youngsters about financial markets when you come out. So you're not that savvy. We've been lobbying with the Ministry of Education, all of that, to try and bring in capital markets, invest education as part of the school curriculum. That will be the longer term solution. But on our own, the Colombo Stock Exchange does conduct a lot of programs, even regionally to schools, other bodies, to increase awareness and make investors more savvy about investment in capital markets.
A big question now discussed and given a lot of attention is the state-owned enterprise segment, which needs to be revived, restructured, with a larger population coming on board to say, no, we will not pay taxes to sustain these loss-making entities. But for a long time, I've discussed with your previous chairman as well, who has been talking about bringing loss-making entities as the SOE to be listed on the Colombo Stock Exchange. So how will you work with the restructure plan of the government, private-public partnerships to enable this?
So I think that's really a call the government needs to make. What we have done is we have a market that's ready to list these publics. We have the only market infrastructure in Sri Lanka that can provide a platform for these companies to be listed. And part of the issue of everyone saying, you know, these SOEs aren't profitable, they're a burden on public, I think a good way is to list them because you're publicly accountable. You know, all the listed companies on the Colombo Stock Exchange need to publish their financial, need to have audited accounts, need to be accountable to shareholders. And I think that concept, if that can be brought in even for the state-owned enterprises, that itself will solve the problem. But like I said, that's a decision for the government to take. We as the exchange have a platform that's ready to be able to do that.
Thank you very much for your time here at First and 9. We had with us the chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Dilshan Veerasekara, joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, we'll be back with more news on the other side of the break. The UK will have a new Prime Minister. Details after this break. Welcome back to the news. The prevailing heavy rainfalls are expected to continue until Wednesday in several parts of the island. The Department of Meteorology expects rainfall of over 150 millimetres in the western and Sabaragamu provinces, as well as in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Mathura districts. Taking the heavy rainfall situation into account, the Department of Irrigation warned of a risk of flooding to low-lying areas.
Several parts of the island have once again begun to experience heavy rainfall. During the past 24-hour cycle ending at 8 am today, the highest rainfall was recorded from the area of Hanwella in Colombo district, measuring 150 millimeters. Given the present weather pattern, the Meteorology Department issued a weather advisory as they expect heavy falls to some districts and provinces of the country.
Prevailing showery conditions in the southwestern part of the country is due to strengthening of southwest monsoon flow across Sri Lanka. This showery condition will continue till Wednesday. Tonight and tomorrow morning, very heavy falls above 150 millimeter can be expected at some places in western and Sabaragamu provinces as well as in Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Mathura districts. The sea areas of the coast extending from Puttalam to Pothuwil via Colombo, Galle and Hambantota will be very rough at times, and therefore it is advised not to enter into fishing and naval activities in these sea areas.
With more rainfall expected tomorrow, the Department of Irrigation warned of a risk of flooding in areas of the river basins of Attanagalu, Kalu, Kalani, Gin and Nilwala if heavy rain persists in one or more of the river basins. Taking this situation into account, the people living close to flood-prone areas near the river basins are requested to remain vigilant.
Now, 7 people were killed in a 6.8 magnitude earthquake that hit southwest China's Sichuan province today. The epicenter was monitored at 29.59 degrees north latitude and 102.08 degrees east latitude at a depth of 16 kilometers. The Chinese government activated its level 3 emergency response for earthquakes, the third highest in China's 4-tier earthquake emergency response system. The Sichuan Earthquake Administration activated its level 2 emergency response. That wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.